All right, I think we'll get cracking here. Yeah. People sit down and we'll start. All right, so my name is Jeremy Larson, and we'll be talking missional outreach today, and we'll maybe just start with a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, we just thank you for the time. I pray that you will guide the discussion and help it to be productive and useful in people's churches and lives. In your name I pray. Amen. All right, so we'll move along to the next slide here. So the goal for this session is really, it's really for the person who's already, maybe at church even, that says, hey, we've got a passion to outreach. We want to reach the world with the gospel, not really sure how to start. We've got all kinds of different personalities and perspectives and desires and things. How do you coalesce that into a common direction and get people on board? That's kind of the idea. So to generate a lot of ideas for the mission as possible, but then to discern down to where's the one we want to settle on, one or two, and then how do you communicate that with your congregation and have clarity of a purpose and those kinds of things. So that's where we're kind of drive at today. Hopefully it's pretty practical. Okay, next slide. So the assumption here, first of all, is it's not going to be a super spiritual talk, I guess. It's going to be really practical. But I'm assuming that, from the verse, unless the Lord builds the house, the workers labor in vain. Okay, we want to understand that and undergird everything we're talking about with that. Kind of like before you preach a sermon, you got to study and you got to, plan your sermon and have it organized. And there's nothing unspiritual about the planning and organizing part. But mostly what we're going to talk about today is the planning and organizing. But we have to understand that undergirding assumption is that we're reliant upon the Lord really to guide us to the right place. Okay, so I want to touch on that. Okay, next slide. So a hypothetical scenario, suppose you're at a congregation and the church was given a large sum of money, maybe from someone passed away and had left this to the congregation and didn't have a clear direction of how it should be spent. And so the church says, well, we don't have any financial needs right now that are pressing. What should we do with these funds? How do we best steward this? Okay, think about how would you handle that? What would you do in your congregation with that? So that's the hypothetical scenario. So next slide. So we want to think about, okay, well, we want to have as many, it's kind of think of it as two funnels. First, we want to funnel wide with all kinds of crazy ideas and bring them all into the picture, but then we want to funnel narrow afterwards and settle on just a few. So funnel wide first, and then funnel narrow. So that's what we're going to talk about. It's only two sections then. How do we funnel wide to get lots of ideas? And then once we have all those ideas, how do we funnel down to something that we really want to do? Next slide. So the funneling wide part, we sometimes call this brainstorming. It's a common phrase for it. And I would suggest that in a congregation, sometimes, at least in our congregations we've had, it depends on your size and those kinds of things, but it might be a temptation to say, hey, we just got a whole bunch of money. Let's decide at our annual meeting and let's just decide what we're going to do with it. And I would really caution against that. I think that a congregational meetings oftentimes is not a good place to make decisions like that. Sometimes you got people that can't hear. You got people that just want to get to the football game. they want to be there. It's just not a great time for that. So I would suggest more so to form a steering committee, someone who's going to say, hey, what should we do as a new outreach for this congregation? And who wants to be a part of that? And maybe even better yet, to even approach people and say, I think you'd be good at this. And to find out someone who's got a facilitation skills, they can get people to participate. Who is a person who can really doesn't just dominate the conversation, but can make sure all the voices are heard. So find that person and see if they'd be willing to serve as a facilitator on the team. And then find people who've got diverse thinking. Not that they look different, but they think different. You want people who have different thinking. They all commonly want to they have a missional outreach idea, passion, but they just have different perspectives. So you'd like to have a lot of different thoughts being brought into that. And not so much tactical thinkers, but strategic thinkers, big picture thinkers, people who are not afraid to think outside the box. You want to get those kinds of people there. And take some time. A true team that works well together has a little time to form. I work with the student council at the Bible college while I'm there, and I tell them every board needs to have a time, every team in fact, has a time of forming, storming, norming, and performing, it's called. In the forming stage, you're all a little bit tentative. You don't want to tick anybody off. You want to be careful what you say. You don't want to sound stupid. So you kind of are reserved. And then you have your first arguments where you disagree on something, But you get past it and you realize, oh, okay, I guess we can disagree and we can move on, and that's fine. And once you get past that, that's a good stage. It's good when you start to share your ideas and you disagree. Then you get past it, and then you're in the norming stage, and you can free flow information back and forth. And performing is not every group gets there, but you actually value other people's dissenting opinions. And hey, sometimes I'm too far this way. I need you to pull me back over here, and that's kind of the thing. So you want the steering committee to work together enough where they can get through that forming, storming, at least into the norming phase where they can share information back and forth. Otherwise, you just have a few dominant personalities that run the whole thing, and you don't get where you should be. So, and the scope of this group, the steering committee, should end when they've submitted a proposal to the congregation says, yes, let's do it, okay? That should be the end. So the scope, you want to know how long this should go. Okay, next slide. So, on this wide top, funneling wide kind of brainstorming approach, I think asking the congregation, what kind of crazy ideas do you have? And emphasizing, submit it to us, talk to us, put it in writing, send us an email, talk to us at coffee time, whatever. What kind of ideas do we have to outreach for our community, outreach to the world? What do you have? And then once you've got that, then try it again, but give them categories. Give them categories of, okay, you've given me your ideas. Now think about these different categories. Can you think of one or two ideas in these categories? That just generates more thinking, more thoughts, more squirrely, crazy ideas. And at this point, there's no bad ideas. You never say, well, that's not reasonable. We can't do that. You never do that. In the brainstorming idea, you want crazy stuff to come out there, because even if an idea is crazy, it might generate creativity and say, well, that's nuts, but it makes me think about this. And that's actually a pretty good idea. So you don't want to squelch any crazy ideas at this point. You want to generate unusual things, okay? But because it gets people thinking outside of what they normally think about. Okay, so encouraging all the voices to share. So then the steering committee takes all this information from the congregation, however you gather it from them, and they look at it and discern and say, okay, this makes me think about this, this, and this, and they even add to it. So you're getting a big list of all kinds of different stuff. Okay, and you want to be giving regular updates to the congregation in this process, saying we're still getting more information, still coming up with crazy ideas. Anything you can do to generate these things is all positive at this standpoint. Okay, keep going. Next slide. So I just to simulate this for this group, I can't run through this process. So I just run it into an AI system, and I said, show me different categories that we would have for a congregation to do outreach. And this is what it came up with. I'm not endorsing these or whatever. This is what I got from AI. Okay, so this is the categories it came up with. You could give something like this to the congregation and say, give me your crazy ideas in these categories, just to generate some different ideas. Okay, and next slide. So this is what AI came with, and it's in its simulated congregation. It said, hey, let's try an alpha course for spiritual formation. Let's try an alpha course. Let's try discipleship triads, which is near and dear to my heart at the Bible College. Just a little plug there. Then it has this one on the bottom, community, baptism, and testimony services. I don't even know what that means. I have no idea what that means. Maybe you guys know what that means. I have no idea what that means. But in this case, you'd leave that in there because, hey, well, let's ask somebody, hey, what did you mean by this? And they might explain something to you that you've never thought of before. And again, this is an idea that sometimes that stimulates a creative idea in some fashion. So those are the kinds of things you wanna have. Okay, next one. So mercy and compassion. Maybe, hey, let's start a food pantry. Let's do a refugee resettlement program. Next one. Education and mentoring. How about a literacy program? How about a mentorship for young people? Next one. Family and youth. Parenting workshop. Youth Sports League. Next one. Global missions, short-term mission trips, parenting with partnering with a sister church in some other country. That'd be great. Keep going. Community and civic engagements. How about a local cleanup effort or renewal community garden, something like that. Hey, our congregation's so we just hang out with Christians. We don't know anybody who's not a Christian. Hey, how about a garden? Something like that. Next one. Healing and recovery. We talked about, I think that last session, that was great. Showed about celebrate recovery, grief share. We've done that in a church I was at for a while. Next one. Arts and culture, faith-based art exhibits or worship art workshops. Next one. Creation care, river cleanups, getting involved with the community in that way. Kind of an interesting one. I read a part of a book by Gene Veith. I put it in the sheet. Post-Christian, it was called. He was kind of out of the box thinking. He talked about how I would not think about creation care. That wouldn't be one that I would think about. This would be an idea generation that wouldn't come from me, typically. But he talked about how look for common ground with people that are outside the church. Everybody can get behind no lead in the drinking water. I think that's something probably everybody can get behind. It's not a Christian, non-Christian thing, So look for ways that you can reach people that wouldn't otherwise go to church. He also had another one. He said, again, out of the box for me, he said people are into healing crystals and healing stones, in kind of a new age kind of a thing. People that are spiritual but not religious, he said. And he said, you just never know if people wouldn't come to a special meeting service on the sacraments, and they might be more open to that kind of a theology than you might expect. And you just have to just so different with. I would have never thought about having a sacramental teaching series aimed at inviting people who would normally be involved in what I would consider cultic activities. So anyway, just ways that you might get creative ideas that you would normally think of. Okay, next slide. Okay, so now you've got this list of crazy ideas. This may be 100 items long or something like that. Most of them are nuts. What do you do? How do you go forward with this group then? Okay, so then, next slide. This is the funneling down approach. So the funneling down then is to how do we take what we have and take it down to where we want to be. And we have to be merciless to discard ideas at this point. So I want to teach you two tools, and there's lots of different tools you can use for funneling down. These are two that I want to teach you that I think are pretty helpful and easy to use. So first one is the impact effort grid. So again, we got a long list of probably 100 items, and we want to classify them just in two ways. And I've got a spreadsheet that I sent to home missions, and they can. This is available for downloading in this way. So first of all, you classify all those different 100 items. Whether they're high impact, and by impact it means how many people are going to be affected by what we do here, and what's the potential for significant impact. Like this could improve them spiritually, or this is just something that's going to make them feel good for a little bit. Something that has a range. And then on the effort side of things, how much effort is this going to take on our part? How much money is it going to take, or how much man hours? And so you kind of think in your head, and this is just a go no go, high low. It's not a scale of 1 to 10. It's like high, low. You have to be able to kind of classify it that way, high or low. So next slide. Here's an example. All your different ideas, you'd say high effort, low intensity, or low effort, high impact. Anyway, you're rating all of them. You go through each one line by line, and it wouldn't take very long, but just to say, okay, how do we bucket these things? Next slide. After you bucketed them, it really puts them into 4 quadrants. There are some things that are going to be high impact and high effort. Well, those are big projects. Okay, we can maybe do 1 or 2 of those, but we can't do very many of them. Okay, there's other ones that are high impact, low effort. Well, shoot, that's the winners, right? Those we want to do. Those are big hitters. Let's do it. But then there's ones that are low impact but high effort. Well, we want to stay away from them because that's not a very efficient use of time. There's a few things that are low impact, low effort. Well, you might do a few of them. So it doesn't hurt. Maybe move the ball down the field a little bit, but don't spend all your time on those. Okay? So the whole thing is this tool is really helpful when you want to do a number of different things. When you've got a few different, let's do a number of things, but we want to channel our energy into ones that are really going to be impactful, but we're realistic about the amount of effort that we have that we can put into it. Okay? So it helps you narrow down the number that you're going to further analyze after this. Okay? Next slide. So here's an example. We got some ideas that are high impact, high effort. Okay, those are big projects. Limit them to those. We've got high impact, low effort. Bang, let's do them for sure. Cross out the ones that are out of the way and think about the ones that are quick wins. We may or may not do a few of those. Okay, next slide. Okay, so we still got too many to implement. How do we go further from this point? Next slide. The second way to evaluate criteria that I'm going to show you is, and again, this is going to be in the spreadsheet. Admittedly, this gets a little mathy, not too bad, but you may be sitting there saying, I was told there'd be no math. There's a little bit of math here. But again, it's in the spreadsheet, and I'll kind of walk it through. I'm a recovering engineer, so you kind of give me a little patience with that, okay? So you choose the criteria that are going to narrow this list, okay? And everybody does this in their head, Everybody has a list of criteria. When someone says, hey, let's start a food pantry, okay, you automatically in your brain, you start thinking about how good of an idea this is based on a set of criteria that you have in your head, and everybody does it. This is going to take what's in your head and talk about it with the other group, and this is why it's important to have some group dynamic of trust in the group, and say, I don't like this idea because of this, and this. I do like it because of this, and this, okay? And everybody's doing it. You're just writing down what's already in your head, and so is everybody else, okay? So writing down all the different criteria that are in your head. Okay, these are the things that I'm subconsciously evaluating all of these criteria against, okay? And these are just ones that I threw up as an example, okay? And the first thing you have to ask is, okay, all the criteria that are in my head, are these a must-have, or is this a want-to-have, okay? A must-have or a want-to-have. And the best part about this particular analysis tool is the discussion. It's not the math. The math will generate an answer, right? But it's the discussion with a team of people that says, we have to have this, we think. This stuff maybe want to, okay? And that discussion is really, really helpful in clarifying what you want to prioritize, okay? Next slide. So the must-haves, if it doesn't qualify as a must-have, it's just out, okay? And you don't do any further analysis. If it doesn't hit and keep these criteria to 4 or 5 things. No more than 4 or 5 things. If it's not hitting those must-haves, boom, they're gone. You need to be mercilessly trying to narrow this list down. But then you have your want-to-haves. Things like, I don't know if I got some examples. Oh, we want something that people are going to get behind, people are going to want to volunteer for. How realistic is it? Are we reaching the unchurched? You know, it doesn't have to reach the unchurched, but we really want it to reach the unchurched, okay? That kind of thing. And then for the want-to-haves, you go further and you say, okay, all these want-to-haves aren't necessarily equal in my mind. Some things I want them more than others. Some things I want them less than others. And again, this is already in your head, right? You're just talking with your group and saying, okay, we're collectively agreeing on a set of criteria and how important they are to us. And the discussion and the debate and the conversation around that is the most important part of this process. And so from that, you're saying, okay, I think I'm valuing volunteer potential as a 5, and I value twice as much that this meets a community need around us, okay? So discussing that and discerning. And with that then, you say, okay, now we've got this criteria. We want to have these 4 things. We're evaluating them against as wants. We've already taken out the stuff that has a must-haves. We've set our weight of how important these criteria are for us. Okay, now how about this idea? Where does this idea fall within this set of lists, okay? And we score that between a 1, a 3, and a 10. And everybody wants to say a 1, 5, and a 10. We just find that when you do that, everybody picks 5 for everything. And we're looking for ways to discern the best ideas from the worst ideas, okay? So a 3 lets you say, well, it's not a really low, but it's not a high for sure. And it just lets those highs emerge the best. So that's why we go 1, 3, and 10. Okay? And then you multiply the score that your team gave against that weight, and then it gives you a score and says how important this, or how well this particular idea matches the collective idea of the group for what's most important. Okay, next slide. So here's an example. We got the weights there in green. We got the different ideas listed there. I've averaged, so suppose you've got 4 people in your group, you might disagree. Someone says, oh, I think this is a 10. Another one says, I think it's only a 3. You can settle on an agreed score, or you can just average it out and say, whatever, let's just average it out. So that's what that average score is. So you multiply the weight times the average score, and that gives you your result. Add them all up, and it shows here that idea number 2 has the highest number listed here. So you might look at that and say, again, don't let the tool drive you. Don't say, okay, this is only math-based, this is what we have to pick. But then ask yourself, does this feel right? Does it feel like number 2 is our best one? Or secretly, do you, in your heart of hearts, say, I think number 3 was really actually a better one. I'm just not sure why the numbers are telling us this, but in my gut, I like 3 better. Well, why is that? Well, I think because of this and this. Well, do you think that we did the weights wrong? Do you think we should have had that weighted differently based on what you said? Yeah, maybe so. You know, kind of use that as, again, the biggest thing is the discussion. It just drives the discussion in the right place. So you're asking yourself, what are we really valuing here? And the reason this is really helpful is because when you come to your congregation and you say, we really think this is a good idea, you can have a story to tell, and because we thought about this, we evaluated against these criteria, and we weighted it this way, and this is how we arrived at this suggestion to the congregation. And the congregation might look at it and say, I don't like this idea at all. As a collective congregation, we don't like this. And you might ask, why? Why is that? Then you have a way to say, okay, look at our list of must-haves and want-to-haves. What do we have wrong? What did we as a group value that you as a congregation did not value? And then that drives a conversation with the congregation. You can talk about that and then reevaluate and say we want different criteria, different weights, and just run the same thing through it again. It just allows a mechanism to have conversations that are fruitful, productive, and meaningful, and allows you to adjust course if it goes that direction. Next slide. So again, you can select your top choices, talk about it, report to the congregation, and present. Okay, we thought option number 2 was the best. We are suggesting this. Our motion is that our congregation engages in this ministry next year, and so on. Congregation votes yes or no. If it votes no, you get the information from them. What did we get wrong? What criteria should we change? Easy as that. Shift it all out. Suggestion number 2. What do you think? Got it wrong again? What did we get wrong? Adjust your criteria. It's a process that you at least have a path forward that you can eventually arrive at something that you could do. Eventually you submit it and the congregation says, yes, great, love it, let's do it. Next slide. At this point then, this steering committee would end. Now that they have fulfilled their role, they have walked the congregation through different options, prioritizing, submitting an option to them that they have agreed to, and it's able to be handed off to someone else. And a lot of times the type of people to implement would be different than the type of people who are strategically thinking about what they should do, because it's a tactical approach. We've got strategic thinkers in the beginning, but to implement oftentimes is tactical people. And so I think a different group oftentimes is the right ones to implement something. Not that there can't be crossover, because you don't want to lose some of the vision, purpose, and meaning in it, but that's kind of the approach. Next slide. This is actually not a random scenario. This is the process we worked through in our congregation in Fargo. I was on the steering committee, and because I'm a recovering engineer, this is the process I took them through. And so that's what we did with it. That's actually just a process. This is how we ended up deciding to plant the church in Fargo. So that was what happened. So that's all I have today. Questions or comments? A little too much mathy. I'm worried about that. Some of you maybe lose. I saw some of that. I saw it. Go ahead.
What were some of your top, core ideas besides planting the church?
Yeah, we had. So you never know what's going to come up, right? We thought about purchasing a home for. We had a number of seminarians that were coming as interns, and we thought we should just buy a home so that they could stay there. And then if we at some point stopped having seminarians for internship, we'll sell the home again. That was one. Another one, we talked about having a reverse missionary. We didn't know if the feasibility of this one at all. Just crazy ideas that come up. Can we bring someone from? We have a lot of immigrants in Fargo. Could we bring someone from Africa to Fargo and have them be a missionary to the immigrant community in Fargo? That was a crazy idea we had. Rachel, do you remember any other ones? I can't remember. Yeah, she doesn't remember. Those are a couple of them. I can't remember the other ones were, but I think we talked about additional. We were going to add on to the building. We had some building things, but we had done a number of building project improvements already, and so that one kind of got filtered out. Yeah. Anyway, other questions? Yeah.
Best size of the group for something like this?
Yeah, I would say ours group was 4, and I think that was okay. I think it should be, I would say 3 to 5. That's my suggestion, because I think with any group dynamic, it takes longer. The more people you have, the longer it takes to build trust, to move through that forming, storming, norming, performing thing. And so I think, especially when it's just brainstorming and getting to a solution, an implementation team, I think, could vary depending on how complex the implementation would be. But to just get ideas from people, solicit them, and narrow them down, I think that could be 3 to 5, my suggestion. But whatever it takes to be, you can tell from this, you have to be able to trust each other to really say, I don't really like that idea, or I do like this one. Because sometimes you're telling the person that submitted the idea you don't like it, and you have to have a relationship that's enough trust to be able to have free flow of information. Otherwise, you're you're going to spin your wheels and you're going to end up with something you don't, it's not going to really work. Any other questions?
You talked about the triads.
Yep.
And that's a big part of your ministry right now.
Yep.
But maybe many of us would love to know what that looks like in reality.
Sure. You mentioned, the question was, what do the triads look like? So that's a passion of mine. I fell into small group discipleship, 3 to 4 people in a small group in Fargo, just kind of accidentally fell into it. And then when I came to the Bible college, that's what we have implemented at the Bible college. All the students get into a small group like that. And I guess a really short way I say it is that I think numbers matter. Again, the recovering engineer says this. I say 2 people for 2 years. That's kind of because that kind of rolls off the tongue really good. But having I think the number of people matter. I think a group of 12 people is fine. It's great. There's nothing wrong with that. It just takes a long time to build trust with those 12 people. I think 1-on-1 is fine, but I think it's hard to multiply because that one person always sees the leader as like this sage Yoda figure that knows a lot, and they'll never be as smart as that person, and it makes them reluctant to multiply and start their own discipleship group. They kind of want to stay a learner. And I think that having a little bit of a group of 2 or 3 people, that's a bit of a sweet spot where you've got some round table learning from each other, not just the sage Yoda figure, and yet it's not so large that it takes a long time to build trust. And it becomes, for lack of a better word, fun. It's a fun way to do it. And so that's what we found. It took a little while, but the Bible college students have bought into that for the most part, and it's been a good thing. I just asked last night, it was four girls sitting around, I asked them, how's your D group going? And they all kind of smiled and said it's going really good, first year students. So it's coming around. But I think and then I think after 2 years, what I found after I had invested in the guys for a couple of years, like they kind of knew me. Like the passions I had, it was kind of in them by that time. They kind of knew the things that I was really passionate about that God had taught me. And after 2 years, and even to set ahead of them, 2 years from now, what I'm guiding you towards, that you'll be able to articulate the truths of Christianity and a way to teach others, that you'll know that in 2 years, and you'll be ready to start a new group. We hope. We pray for that. And so to have that in front of them, that it's not too soon to start praying that God will bring them for 2 people for 2 years. So that's what we pray for. And I hope the students will graduate from the Bible college and just do that their whole life. Just every year, invest in 2 people for 2 years and just do that the rest of their lives. That's my dream for them. So some will, I think. So, and some of them have told me they have, which is kind of fun. Any other questions? Yeah. Yeah, we meet together. And part of that, I think, is, again, that round table where when you're just the learner and this other person is with you, what you start to realize is that when they share something, oh, hey, this other person learns from me, and I learn from them. And you realize that, I can contribute. What they don't know is that the leader is learning all the time, right? They just don't know it. A good leader will show them that they are, we're all broken, right? And good leaders are vulnerable, I think, and willing to say, I'm reliant on the Lord for, my daily sustaining, just like everybody else. And I always like to say, I think with developing that trust, I think it's important to be to show vulnerability, and somebody's got to be first. Somebody's got to be the one to say, you know what, sometimes I do dumb stuff, and sometimes I love the wrong things, and sometimes I make bad choices, and God has been faithful in spite of that, and it's scary to do that. And when you dip your toe in the water there and no one bites it off, everybody else sees that, and they feel more comfortable to do the same thing. But somebody's got to be first. And I think the leaders, wise leaders, show some vulnerability, and that builds trust quickly. So we always start by sharing testimonies. And I tell them all the good, the bad, and the ugly, and how God was faithful through it all, pointedly, right? We don't just share the bad without showing that God is good, right? And show that He's faithful in all those things. So I think that's helpful. I encourage people to always start that way. Start with your testimonies. Start with where you're at with the Lord. And that just builds a lot of trust right away, because you kind of know where people are coming from then. When they share about something, you're like, okay, I know why he's saying that, because back in his story he said this, so I know where he's going. You just have a bigger picture of what's going on. So that's my suggestion too. I think we're out of time, right? All right. Thank you for your time. Thanks for listening. Suffering through some math. Okay. See ya.